The next verse ought to be a wake-up call to us, so we don't continue to be enticed by too many Pollyannish modern church doctrines about believers in the end times. Verse 12 says that when all of this we've been talking about is going on, this will be the time when our endurance as believers to suffer the attacks of the beast are going to be the most difficult to endure, because we choose to defy the Antichrist and instead to obey God's commandments and exercise Yeshua's faithfulness. In other words, believers living at this time will be given a stark choice with no middle ground. Either adore and worship the beast and live, or obey God's commandments and rely on the faithful work of Christ on the cross and be killed. Either give allegiance to the Antichrist and have a few more weeks or months of a comfortable life, or maintain allegiance to God by doing His commandments and trusting in His Son, die at the hands of the beast, and then accept eternal rewards in heaven later. Sounds like an easy choice now, when such a choice is just kind of hypothetical. But it's going to be unbelievably difficult when that time arrives, and our choice will be between life and death, and you know what? Probably not a quick and painless one. And in many cases, it's going to involve the lives of our spouses and our children. Once again, notice the phrase that says what God expects of His worshipers. It is that we are to obey His commandments and exercise Yeshua's faithfulness. What is Yeshua's faithfulness? What is Yeshua's faithfulness? Going to His death for the sake of righteousness. That's His faithfulness. But the part I want to highlight for the moment is that we are also to obey God's commandments. This is not that by relying on the grace of Christ that we are obeying God's commandments. Rather, this is two separate things that must happen. First, we must obey God's commandments, the Torah laws. Second, we must trust Christ so much that we are willing to suffer our death the same way He did. What happens if we do the latter but not the former? Yeshua covered that in His Sermon on the Mount. You get to hear it again. Matthew 5:17 through 19. Don't think that I've come to abolish the Torah or the prophets. I have not come to abolish, but to complete. Yes, indeed, I tell you that until heaven and earth passes away, not so much as a yud or a stroke is going to pass from the Torah, not until everything that must happen has happened. So, whoever disobeys the least of these commandments and teaches others to do so is going to be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever obeys them and teaches will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. So here is yet another setting that builds upon what we read in Matthew 5, which is right at the heart of the Sermon on the Mount. Continuing our sincere trust in Christ will, no doubt, make us and keep us as part of the kingdom of heaven. However, in the social hierarchy that Yeshua sets up and rules over, we will be the least among all the members if we deny the ongoing relevance of God's commandments and therefore disobey them, and even teach that to obey them is a bad thing. But for those who faithfully obey God's Torah commandments as an appropriate response from trusting in the faithfulness of Messiah Yeshua, we will be placed at the top of the social hierarchy in God's kingdom. Now, think about this for a minute. Since the duration of this hierarchy is forever, or maybe it's only a mere 1,000 years, as in the 1,000-year reign of Christ, then I think it might be wise to set a goal for ourselves of being the greatest and not the least in God's kingdom. You know, this thought of enduring the nearly inevitable result for believers living during the time of the rule of the Antichrist and refusing to bear his mark concludes with verse 14, and it says that those believers who persevere are the blessed ones, because, you don't like this part, once dead, we don't have to struggle anymore. It says they've run their race, crossed the finish line, as we hear from Paul in 2 Timothy. 2 Timothy 4, 7, and 8. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. All that awaits me now is the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. And not only to me, but also to all who long for him to appear. And we will conclude chapter 14 and begin chapter 15 next time.